It was not in vain that Prime Minister Scholz announced an increase in the defense budget and the purchase of modern planes. Germany is reinforcing bomb shelters and has ordered a new air raid warning system. This is right, but it's strange that it has been done just now. I would like to start with Germany, because while Germany was buying Russian gas, the Soviet cult of May the Ninth was reviving in Russia. The cult of victory. On the cars of ordinary Russians and on military equipment, it has become fashionable to place a slogan "To Berlin." And a few years ago, in the spring of 2020, the news appeared in the Ukrainian media that the Russian Guard was buying stickers for cars with the inscription "To Berlin" by May the 9th. This is an even more popular inscription than "To Kiev." Although such inscriptions are also seen in social networks after the annexation of the Crimea and the start of the war against Russia in Donetsk and Lugansk regions. Let me remind you that the National Guard is one of the official power structures of the state of Russia, and the purchase of the stickers "To Berlin" to popularize this slogan would be impossible in such a centralized country as Russia without the full approval and support of the supreme power. It turns out that with one hand the Kremlin was building the Nord Stream 2, and with the other hand it in every possible way fueled the aggressive moods of the Russians towards Germany. A good partner, there is nothing more to say. But we in Ukraine know the price of friendship with Russia very well. So in this situation something else is more surprising. What did German intelligence and diplomats in Moscow look at all these years? Didn't the slogan "We can repeat," which is repeated in Russia, has replaced the European Day of Mourning of May the 8th, "Never again scare anyone," together with the direction to Berlin? This May the 9th cult is so dangerous because it has already proven its ability to go to war against its neighbors. From this very cult the fight against mythical Nazism in Ukraine has begun. This cult is very carefully cultivated almost from the first years of the child's life. This is the state policy, marches, parades, etc. So it's brought up from the very childhood. It's also a part of the answer to the question of whether it's true that the majority of Russians support an invasion of Ukraine. Yes, because they found an excuse for their aggression, fictional Nazis. So Russian propaganda has created a very convenient structure that can justify any aggression. But that's not all. Let's talk about how they made all of Europe and the free world their enemy. Freedom has never been a tradition in Russia, just like democracy. But since Putin came to power, freedom has become a hindrance to Russia's massive corruption. Examples of successful ruling of law states, including Europe, greatly interfered. They provoked some questions like why? Why can't we do this? Why do they live much better than us? All this was dangerous for Russia's corrupted autocracy, which inherited many Soviet traditions. More than the European Union, Europe, the USA and the entire Western world could not be a positive example for Russia. And then the bonds came into play, some religious traditions, which became the second part of the new ideology. These bonds take orthodoxy and its postulates as a basis and make them part of the state propaganda. A special spirituality, which is guarded by Russia, was proclaimed. This propaganda renamed Europe into Gayrope, declared it a new Gomorrah with a special aggressive condemnation of gay parades, feminism. Human rights, of course, are not mentioned in this context. Don't try to look for logic in the actions of the Russian authorities and propaganda. The same people wanted to make money selling oil, coal and gas to the European Union, strengthen their military forces with European technologies, at the same time inciting hatred and condemning European human rights policies. Of course, without knowing Russian language, it's difficult to assess the scale of this information bullying, but it's better to take note of it. Therefore, Europe and the European Union, which is called unspiritual, is another target of Russian propaganda, which can turn into anything. The one who yesterday and a year ago was the target of propaganda, tomorrow may become a target for tanks and soldiers. By the way, the Russian Orthodox Church and its priests have publicly blessed the Russian army to invade Ukraine. This is their official position, and that's why 200 clergymen of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate initiated an international church tribunal for Patriarch Kirill. As one of the possible scenarios of hybrid aggression against any country in Europe, I see a kind of crusade against lack of spirituality, which will be announced or supported by the Russian Orthodox Church, and they will continue the war if they are not stopped. This was a small overview of Russian propaganda directed against European neighbors. Subscribe to the channel because in the next episode we will talk why Russia is constantly at war and what to do about it.